Hola, hola, muy buenos días. Feliz Día del Amor y la Amistad. Les queremos mucho y gracias por estar con nosotros aquí en Sun Up on 7. Thank you so much for being here with us. I want to remind you that you can follow us on our various social media platforms, which include Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. And if you miss any of the segments, you can go back on YouTube and you can rewatch on our YouTube channel. Of course, there's something that you're definitely going to enjoy, that you're going to be able to grab some information and carry on within your network. And please share our pages with everybody that you know, because that's how our Sun Up on 7 community grows. So we thank you in advance for that. I'll invite you to this very interesting and purposeful conversation right opportune with Valentine's with representative from Belize Family Life Association, Kylah Ciego. Kylah, it's good to have you here with us.
It's good to be here.
Good morning. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day to you both.
You're looking great.
Thanks.
Right.
Kev.
So the conversation we're going to be having today revolves around consent, expectations in relationships, and boundaries.
Yeah.
And it's very important for us to mention that this doesn't only go for people that are in relationships, like that are dating, that are married. But of course, we know a lot of young people are going to be out there going on dates. So it's important to establish consent, establish boundaries from right there. So if you're a sexual person, if you're not sexual, it doesn't matter, because intimacy is not just about sex.
Right.
Right? So let's get going with this conversation.
Right.
Yeah?
So, like you mentioned, we're in this Valentine's season, and a lot of love is in the air. So is COVID, so wash your hands.
I love it.
I received that from Kevin.
Yes.
And so a lot of romanticism happens around Valentine's, right? And so just putting it out there, we know that everybody might not celebrate Valentine's Day, but it's just an extra day to show your love and appreciation or affection for someone. So first things first is consent.
Oh yes, let's
What
talk
is
that.
consent? What is consent, right? So it is direct agreement. It is giving permission. It is saying that you agree to participate or to experience something, right? So you have consent that is direct because you verbalize it, as well as you have your nonverbal cues that could either give consent or it's showing that you're not in consent, right?
Yeah.
So when we think about consent too, it also goes with what are the personal boundaries that a person has. So if I'm starting to get to know someone, it's important for me to know what's important to me, what are my boundaries. So what are the things that I will do, what are the things that I won't do, right?
Yeah.
So for example, if you want to go on a date, is it okay with you to, simple thing like holding someone's hand, are you okay with doing that in public? Or is that too much scenery?
Yeah.
And I would rather not do that, right? And so you have to be able to communicate that to the person that you are dating or you are engaging with. So it's things like those. So what are my boundaries? Do I, after a first date, or if you ask me to go on a date and I say, okay, yes, I don't mind, go, I'm consenting to the date.
Right.
And if you expect that, okay, well, I don't buy this plate of food and this bottle
I took
of
it to
wine.
Midtown.
Yes,
I drop my hand for you. Watch, I drop my pocket.
exactly.
Look at
you
that.
know. And so when we done, I'm gonna take you back to my place. I don't consent to that. So consent also has different levels. So consent is specific. So I am consenting to going on this date. That is what I'm consenting to. You also may need consent at every activity, right? So for instance, you are comfortable with this person, and so in this first encounter, you are consenting to sex. You're hanging out, you consent to sex. That doesn't mean that every time you hang out, you want to engage in sex. So at every time, whatever expectations you have to ensure that there is consent to participate in that, right?
Yeah.
Consent can be given and it can be withdrawn.
Exactly.
I was just going to talk about that, Kylah, because I want to go into the idea that convincing thing that can happen sometimes with people where we're in a setting and, you expect to be getting sex and the person has made it clear that they don't want to do that. They have not consented, but now the next party is looking at that person and kind of try persuade her, try tell her, give her the sweet symphonies and all these things to get that. Like, what would you have to say to both the person that is trying to push for consent and the person that has said no already?
So we need to respect people and their decisions and their boundaries, right? So exactly what you said, Renata, you have persons who are persistent, and like I've experienced this myself with persons that are interested and they want to date me. So they're like, you know, I really like you. Can we do XYZ? Can I take you out? This, that. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. And every time it's consistent. No, I am a strong enough person to say no. Every time.
Yeah.
No. But what if somebody then decides that, okay, then yes.
Yeah, finally, stop bothering me. You know what? I'm going to say yes so that you can stop bothering me.
Is that really consent, though? It's then that person, you know, I'm just going to do this to get it over with because I don't want this person to harass me anymore.
Right.
That is harassment.
And
that is not good. And we operate like that and we think that it's okay. It's not, right?
Yeah.
So when you are pressuring someone, you are seeking to manipulate someone into doing something that you want them to do. So that is not appropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those kinds of behavior, if the viewers watching out there, if that's something that you do, and I know men do it because I experience it a lot, that is not okay.
It is not okay. Yeah. I wanna go back to something that you mentioned, and it was okay. So we already established that we consented to go on a date. Yeah. A date is not just going up and showing up to a place. There's many things that happens in a date. And I feel that not because you consented to go out with somebody, I like to do this thing where I try to check in with the person that I'm with. Are you okay? Is this fine? Because a lot of people, they would think like once I consent, we're going the whole way. Right? You consented for everything that comes. So I feel like it's also important for us to check in with the person and see how comfortable they are. Because we might consent verbally, but then you mentioned something very key, which is your body language. Yeah.
That is
You could change your mind.
Yeah, that is very key what Kevin said. So checking in on someone could sound like, you okay? Everything all right? Everything good? Asking for consent is also like, would you want to do this? Is this okay? Can I touch you? Right? And there's a lot of things that you don't know everything about a person. And sometimes, especially when it comes to touch, right? People have their own traumas that they carry. And so certain people might not like to be touched a certain place. Case in point, I'm not much of a tactile touch person. So I will only touch you if I am very comfortable with you.
Yeah.
And some persons, and we have this habit in Belize that we like to touch people, or you slap somebody on their hand or something like that. And so even those kinds of behaviors, it's okay, it's appropriate to say, I could touch you, or I could give you a hug. Right now we're in COVID, so I guess we kind of have an extra senses about that. Yeah, can I do that and let that person give you consent, right? Yeah. When we talk about going back to, sexual activity and engaging, so even if you agree to start sex or engage in sex and the partner is doing something that maybe you're not comfortable with, that person has the right to say, you know what, I'm not comfortable with this. Make we stop. I don't consent to this. And so even before you get to that place of sexual activity, you need to talk about what's okay, what's a no-go.
Yeah.
Are you into oral? Are you into anal? Are you into this?
Can we do unprotected or protected
unprotected
sex?
or protected? And we have this, as you mentioned that, Kevin, we have this belief that, okay, once we are going unprotected, once we are raw, then
it's official.
It's official,
Yeah.
So that's an expectation as well that, we've been together for a long period of time. We could start to have unprotected sex now, but you have to talk about that. I just pull off a condom while you're having sex and do that. That's wrong. You need consent from the other person.
Something really that is a hindrance with having those conversations is because it's hard to have those conversations. I think people feel the awkwardness of and the rejection. Let's go right there, honey, because there is that rejection of having somebody tell you, no, I don't want to do that. And then you're like, kind of have that bounce back like, okay, what do I do now?
Right.
You don't kill the moment. So for both parties, it's like, I don't want to kill the moment, so I just have to do it. Even though I don't want to do it, or the person's like, I don't want to be able to hear no. So there's so much dynamics to it,
Yeah.
but again, like you said, you have to know your body, you have to know yourself, know what you will tolerate and what you won't accept.
Yeah.
And so then you establish your boundaries and talk to people and have those awkward conversations, because if you don't, that could cause you to be traumatized. You do something that you did not want to do, and that's something that you carry, and you look upon that person differently. And that next person can be able to be rejected or not rejected and just feel like they just triumph or whatever,
Yeah.
and they didn't know the impact they had on that next person that they were with.
Right.
And as you said, that sometimes, like you said, like we're not cultured in that way to speak for ourselves or
Yeah.
to be assertive. And so when I tell you, don't call me after 9 o'clock, and you still call me after 9 o'clock, and I answer, it's me then being passive about my boundaries.
Yeah.
I am allowing you to violate my boundaries. So it also, sometimes it could seem like you're being, you're asserting yourself, and that's fine. And that's okay, and people need to respect that.
Yeah.
Because the decisions that you make are, maybe they're influenced by somebody else, but you're making that because that's in your best interest.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? So, expectations as well. We kind of mentioned it earlier, but the reason why we get so upset over rejection, of course, is our own thoughts and the expectations that we set. And it's a whole culture that we have, like we're not used to being rejected and being okay with it. And maybe I'm speaking from a female's perspective, right? In getting rejected and being okay with it, because then you feel that, okay, well, there's something wrong with me.
Right.
But
That's the first
It
thing where
has
people,
nothing
there's
to do with
something
you.
wrong with me, right? That's
Like,
where
why
people-
would you say no to me?
Yeah.
And there's also the entitlement, like, there's an atmosphere of an entitlement in people that you have to do it because I want you to do it.
Yeah. So right now, like we're talking about expectations. Let's go to the scenario where we're going on a date, right? So there was this thing where people say, I'm paying for your date, so I am expecting certain things about you, right? Or there was this question that was posed about, we're in a marriage, yeah, and if the man is, because let's say focus on heterosexual marriage, where like the man is contributing towards things, paying things, is it automatically that the female is supposed to deliver? And one of the things in what those deliverables was sex. Is it a must that should happen? I know it's not, but can you elaborate more?
I
on
mean,
that?
I feel like that's a sticky situation as well. Because if you look on the religious aspect and what marriage is, you also have a duty to your partner. Like, that is the expectation in a marriage. But I am also very much an advocate for bodily autonomy, which means you decide what you will do with your body, when you will do that with your body. So for me, even in a relationship, even in a marriage, your partner still needs to get your consent. Your husband or your wife needs to get your consent, right? And so, which brings another interesting thing to it, is that how do we actually initiate sex? For instance, do we verbalize it all the time? Or do we just do some looks and we know what that means?
Right.
Right?
Uh-huh.
So sometimes when we initiate certain activities, it's not direct, but the other person already knows what you mean or what you
Yeah.
intend,
Yeah.
right? And so a little, as I mentioned earlier, sometimes consent is your nonverbal actions, right? So nonverbal actions that are free, which means that you are participating fully, then that is also consent, but it's better to have verbal consent
Verbal
that you are
consent.
sure.
Yeah.
So there are certain grounds under which you can't have consent. One, if the person is under the age of consent. So for us, and going back to sexual activity, the age of consent is 16.
Yeah.
So if a person is under the age of 16, they cannot
Consent.
give consent to sexual activity. If you are drunk and you're
That's-
not
yeah.
in your right
state
state
of
of
mind.
mind, your thinking is impaired,
Yeah.
you can't give consent.
That is true. And
Right?
that's very important because people will go out on dates today and they might just be, let me drink some so you loosen up. You know? But if you're drunk, you cannot consent. I definitely
You cannot consent if you're drunk, right? And that goes both ways. So
Yeah.
if both persons are drunk, then I mean, when it comes to when it comes to consent as well, and if persons are drunk, if two people are drunk, then they probably won't do anything.
They won't function.
But yeah, you know, they probably won't do anything. But if you're engaging with someone who is impaired, the person is not really aware of what's going on, then you are violating that person. You are committing an offense. You're committing a sexual offense because that person is not conscious of what is happening, right? So, those are other things could be conscious of. And so even our body language. So when someone is upset or uncomfortable, you could see that, they might stiffen up or they
Look
might
out the window, not talk, or
they're not
look down.
engaged in what you're doing. And so that is also a way to indicate, I don't consent to this.
Yeah.
And so key things as we think about the safety in our relationships is how do we respect the boundaries that people set and not trying to break down that person's boundaries, but respecting it. Because like I said, you could move the fence post once you're comfortable with someone. So maybe right now I might say, I don't like public displays of affection. Let's not do that. Right? But maybe in the next 6 months from now, because of the trust and everything else that we've built, I feel safe with you. This sense of emotional safety, right, with you, then, that's okay. So I could move the boundaries a bit and say, I am okay with hugging or kissing or holding hands in public, right? Other aspect that I wanted to touch on too, is just this whole validation that we seek from social media and the pressures that creates in relationships and the expectations. So, of course, what we've been seeing, over the last couple of years is like, you're on Facebook or you're on Twitter.
If it's not Facebook official, it's not official.
Right? You married today and tomorrow your name is Kylah Mendes on Facebook. And that's fine if you want to do that. What's concerning is that if you need that validation, right? If I need to show everybody that I have the most beautiful partner because of whatever that motivation is, and it's not intrinsic motivation, right? It's to feed the vibe outside, right? So that is also, and people create those expectations in relationships, and when it not happen, then now an issue. But that also ties into what are the boundaries that we're setting and what we're agreeing to, our expectations that we want to meet, and even consent. Because as simple as it looks, do you have the consent of your partner to put that out there?
Definitely. You need to ask for that consent.
You need to. People just think they could just post up anything. And I think, thank you so much for touching on that point of like this social media. I feel like it's kind of brainwashed a lot of people and caused more problems in relationships than anything else. Because you have the expectation of, hey, you see what I do for everybody else. How you do that for me? And like you have to compare.
Like people create a mold, right? A mold of what a relationship
this
should
is
be.
What a healthy. This is what a successful relationship. We have to put pictures all the time.
We have to do this, and if he not post me or if you not do this, like there's so much X, Y, and Z. Like there's boxes you have to check off because of that.
There definitely needs to be a part 2 to this conversation, Kylah.
Unfortunately,
we run out of time.
I will have your earrings that time when I come back, because
it was a really good conversation that we had, because one of the things that I gathered from this is that it's important to have trust in the person that you're going to go out with. And I feel like gut feeling is very important. If you do not feel it within you to say yes or to say no, own that feeling, honor it. But also, like, important to, whenever you're establishing boundaries, not rules, it's what I'm comfortable with. And that's, boundaries are for me, it's not for the person. So, wow. Thank you so much.
I'm thankful for this. I can't wait for the second one, because I think we really need to be having these type of conversations, because you can't shy away from the fact that people might know this, and then they think about it and they're put in some awkward situations. So I saw someone post in the comments that, if you have your boundaries, set it and stick with it. And that's something I want to just echo to everybody out today. Have that awkward conversation, set your boundaries, stick with it, and be able to know that, I now waver, I now move. And own that. whatever the person do, that his or her business, if they don't want to respect that. Because at the end of the day, I know that you have to deal with whatever trauma they enforce upon you after whatever they did not uphold for you. So think about yourself before you think about the next person. And me, remember with the Valentine's, I talk about love everybody, but love yourself too in that regards. And so again, thank you so much,
Thank you,
Kylah, for
Kylah.
this. You'll be back, she'll be back, guys. So now we're way back. And with that, we go to our next commercial break. But when we're back, we're going to be decorating some cupcakes. It's going to be a cupcake off or whatever it is you want to call it. And we'll see who is the winner man. So with that, we go to our next commercial break. When we're back, we'll be tasting some treats and decorating them for you to see.